The stench of unwashed bodies and fear clung to my skin like a second layer I couldn't scrape off. My wrists ached from zip ties cutting into them, and every breath tasted of rust and desperation. The van's metal floor vibrated beneath me as we drove through streets I couldn't see. Istanbul had promised adventure when I'd landed 3 days ago, searching for Sarah, my best friend, who'd vanished after her last enthusiastic message about the city's nightlife. Now I understood why she'd stopped responding. The men who grabbed me wore police uniforms I'd stupidly trusted. Officer Demir, the older one, had promised to help me find Sarah. Instead, they'd drugged my water, and I'd woken here, bound in this moving prison. My phone was gone. Passport, wallet, everything proving I was Brianna Matthews, 20 years old, American, someone who mattered. Without those papers, I was just cargo. The van lurched to a stop. Through thin metal walls, I heard voices in rapid Turkish. Money. Girl. American. The door screeched open, flooding the space with harsh light that made me squint. Rough hands grabbed my arms, hauling me onto unsteady feet. I stumbled into what looked like a warehouse, all concrete and shadows, with crates stacked along walls and a smell like fish market meets something metallic and wrong that closed my throat with panic. "She's pretty," one man said in Turkish, his tone making my skin crawl. "Shame to waste her on kapat çeneni." The command came from deeper in the warehouse, and every man immediately silenced. "Shut up." I'd learned that phrase my first day in the city. The voice carried absolute authority wrapped in boredom, as though commanding men barely warranted attention. Footsteps approached, expensive shoes clicking against concrete with measured precision. The crowd parted. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with disciplined strength rather than gym vanity, dark hair cut short and styled with careless perfection. His face could have been carved from marble, sharp angles and cold beauty. High cheekbones, straight nose, jaw that could cut glass. But his eyes stopped my breath. Dark brown, almost black, sweeping over me with clinical assessment of someone appraising livestock. Younger than I'd expected from that voice. Maybe mid-30s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my year's tuition. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, black shirt underneath, no tie. Everything screamed power, money, danger. This was not someone who could be reasoned with or begged for mercy. This was someone who inspired the kind of fear that made grown men fall silent with a single word. "Khan Bey," Officer Demir said, obsequious now, pushing me forward. I stumbled, my bound hands making it impossible to catch myself. "As promised. American, young, exactly what you requested for—" "I didn't request anything." Khan's voice cut like a blade. "Tarek requested. I'm simply here to inspect what you're trying to pass off as quality merchandise." Merchandise, that's what I was to them. Not a person, just cargo. "She's perfect for the clubs," Demir insisted, desperate. "Young, foreign, no one will miss her. She'll disappear into the system. Without proper vetting?" Khan's eyes never left me. "Without checking if she is what you claim? She could be an agent, a plant, someone with connections bringing unwanted attention." My heart hammered. Was he going to help me? Or just concerned about merchandise quality? "I assure you, Khan Bey, we verified—" "You verified nothing." Khan moved, closing distance in 3 long strides. Even more imposing up close, I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Something told me looking away meant weakness, and weakness here meant death. His hand came up. I flinched, unable to stop the instinct. But he didn't strike. Instead, fingers caught my chin, tilting my face toward light with surprising gentleness. The contrast between clinical touch and violence thrumming beneath his controlled surface caught my breath. "American," he said, confirming not asking. "Your accent when you flinched. Pure American English. no attempt to hide it. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, calloused from someone who didn't just command violence but participated in it. Terrified, but still looking me in the eye. Brave or stupid? Stupid, I managed, voice rough from earlier screaming. Definitely stupid. I wouldn't be here if I were smart. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Amusement? Interest? Gone too quickly. At least you're honest. He stepped back, addressing Demir without looking. Cut her bindings. But Kanbei, now. Officer Demir scrambled, producing a knife to slice zip ties. Blood rushed back with pins and needles that made me gasp, but I refused more weakness. I rubbed my wrists while keeping eyes on Khan Bayrak, flag in Turkish. Your name, Khan said. Brianna Matthews. I lifted my chin, channeling false courage. And I'm not merchandise. I'm a student from NYU who came here looking for her friend, Sarah Chen. She disappeared 2 weeks ago, and these men said they'd help me. Instead, Sarah Chen. Khan's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. Chinese American, 21, student visa, last seen in Beolu? My breath caught. You know her? Is she alive? Please. She's alive. Flat, emotionless. She's also no longer your concern. What does that mean? I stepped toward him, forgetting caution. Where is she? What did you do? His hand shot out, catching my wrist in iron beneath silk. Careful, Brianna Matthews. Your bravery is admirable, but there's a line between courage and suicide. Don't cross it, nor every survival instinct scream to back down. Apologize, make myself small. But something in his tone, in how he knew Sarah's details, ignited fury hotter than fear. She's my best friend, I said, voice shaking but determined. I came halfway around the world to find her. I'm not walking away because some Turkish mobster tells me to mind my own business. The warehouse went deathly silent. Even Demir made a strangled sound of horror. But Khan just studied me with unreadable eyes, his grip neither tightening nor loosening. Turkish mobster, he repeated, dark amusement in his voice. That's what you think I am? Aren't you? Among other things. He released my wrist, turned to Demir. How much did you agree on? 50,000 US, Khan Bey. Standard rate. I'll give you 20. Khan pulled out his phone, typing with quick efficiency. For wasting my time with unvetted merchandise and grabbing someone actually looking for one of our existing assets. If Sarah Chen's friend disappeared, did it not occur to you someone might come searching? Demir paled. I didn't know she was connected. Clearly. Khan's phone chimed. He showed Demir the screen. Payment sent. Get out before I decide stupidity requires more permanent consequence. The fake officers fled, nearly tripping over each other, leaving me alone with dangerous men, the most dangerous standing close enough I could smell his cologne. Expensive oud and leather probably costing more than my plane ticket. Am I being bought? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Is that what happened? Yes. His honesty was worse than a lie. Though rescued would be the term I'd use. Demir planned to sell you to Aksaray brothels. I've spared you that fate. By buying me yourself. By putting you under my protection. He gestured to a man who immediately brought a jacket. Khan draped it over my shoulders, fabric still warm. There's a difference. I don't see much difference between being property of a brothel and property of you. His smile was sharp as a knife. You will. The car that took me from the warehouse was nothing like the van that had brought me there. Sleek black Mercedes, leather seats that probably cost more than my entire apartment back in New York, and soundproofing so complete I couldn't hear the Istanbul traffic I knew must be surrounding us. Khan sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, far enough that we weren't touching. The distance felt deliberate, calculated, like everything else about him. 2 men sat in front, the driver and another who'd been introduced simply as Emre, Kaan's head of security. Both wore the same expensive suits, the same watchful expressions, the same bulges under their jackets that suggested weapons were standard accessories in Kaan Bayrak's world. "Where are we going?" I asked, breaking the silence that had stretched since we'd left the warehouse. My voice sounded too loud in the confined space, and I immediately regretted speaking. "Somewhere safe." Kaan's eyes were fixed on his phone, fingers moving across the screen with the efficiency of someone conducting multiple conversations simultaneously. "My home in Bebek. You'll stay there until I decide what to do with you. I'm not a stray dog you picked up. No." He glanced up, those dark eyes pinning me in place. "Dogs are loyal from the start. You'll require more convincing. I don't want to be loyal to you. I want to find Sarah and go home." Sarah Chen is no longer Sarah Chen. Kaan returned his attention to his phone. "She's been here 6 months, not 2 weeks. She came voluntarily, pursuing what she thought was a modeling opportunity. By the time she realized the truth, she'd already been integrated into one of our operations. She's now called Seelan, works in one of our legitimate businesses, and seems quite content with her new life." The casual way he said it, as though erasing someone's identity was routine, made my stomach turn. You can't just rename people and expect them to forget who they were. Can I? Finally, he set the phone down, giving me his full attention. "Brianna Matthews, NYU student, majoring in international relations with a minor in Middle Eastern studies. You came to Turkey on a tourist visa 3 days ago, staying at a budget hostel in Sultanahmet. Your parents are divorced, mother in Connecticut, father in California, neither particularly invested in your life. You have a younger brother, Michael, who's currently in rehab for the 3rd time. No serious romantic relationships, though you dated someone named Chase for 6 months before he cheated on you with your roommate." Each detail felt like a slap. "How do you know all that?" "I know everything about anyone who enters my world, intentionally or otherwise." He leaned back against the leather seat, somehow making relaxation look threatening. "And before you ask, yes, I had you investigated while you were being transported here. Your phone provided most of the information. The rest came from sources that don't require your permission to access. That's illegal." His smile was cold. "Many things I do are illegal, Brianna. Adding invasion of privacy to the list barely registers." The car turned down a tree-lined street that climbed up from the Bosphorus, passing homes that could only be described as mansions. Each one seemed to compete for which could be most ostentatious. Ornate gates, manicured gardens, security cameras positioned at regular intervals. Old money and new money lived side by side here, and I suspected Kaan Bayrak's money was both old enough to have roots and new enough to have teeth. We pulled through gates that opened automatically, revealing a property that made the other houses look modest by comparison. 3 stories of Ottoman Revival architecture, all white stone and geometric precision, with balconies overlooking what I could glimpse of the Bosphorus between ancient cypress trees. Security was everywhere. Cameras, motion sensors, and men in dark suits positioned at strategic points. "Home," Kaan said simply, as though this palace was just another house. Inside was even more overwhelming. Marble floors inlaid with geometric patterns, soaring ceilings with crystal chandeliers, furniture that looked antique and priceless. But there was something sterile about it all, something that suggested this was a showpiece rather than somewhere anyone actually lived. No family photos, no personal touches, nothing that revealed anything about the man who owned it. A woman appeared from somewhere deeper in the house, middle-aged and efficient-looking in a simple black dress. "Fatma," Kaan addressed her in Turkish, and I caught enough to understand he was instructing her to prepare a room for a guest. The woman's eyes flickered to me with something that might have been pity before she nodded and disappeared. "You'll stay in the East Wing," Kaan said, switching back to English. Fatma will provide everything you need. There are clothes in the closet that should fit. We keep various sizes for situations like this. Situations like kidnapping foreign students. Situations requiring discretion and hospitality. He gestured toward a sweeping staircase. Fatma will show you to your room. We'll discuss your situation further after you've rested and cleaned up. You look like you're about to collapse. I did feel on the edge of collapse, actually. The adrenaline that had kept me upright was fading fast, leaving behind bone-deep exhaustion and the realization of how close I'd come to something far worse than this gilded cage. But I refused to show weakness in front of Khan Bayrak. When can I see Sarah? When I decide you've earned that privilege. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with a frown. I have business to attend to. Don't attempt to leave the property. The security system is quite thorough, and my men have orders to restrain anyone who tries to exit without authorization. So, I am a prisoner. You're under protection. There's a difference. He moved toward what looked like an office off the main entrance. Though, if you'd prefer, I can arrange for you to be returned to Officer Demir. I'm sure he'd be happy to complete his original transaction. The threat was delivered casually, almost bored, but it landed like a punch. You wouldn't. Khan paused in the doorway, looking back over his shoulder. Wouldn't I? Test me, Brianna, and find out exactly how much mercy I'm capable of showing. He disappeared into the office, leaving me alone in that cavernous entrance hall with only Fatma for company. The woman beckoned me to follow, her expression carefully neutral as she led me up the marble staircase and down a hallway lined with what I suspected were original Ottoman miniatures, worth more than my parents' houses combined. My room was more like a luxury hotel suite than a prison cell. King-sized bed with linens that probably had a thread count in the thousands, sitting area with a view of the Bosphorus, bathroom with both a soaking tub and a rainfall shower, walk-in closet already stocked with clothes in my exact size. The attention to detail was unnerving. Someone had anticipated my measurements, my preferences, everything. Fatma gestured toward the bathroom, where I found toiletries, makeup, everything arranged with the same unsettling precision. She said something in Turkish that I didn't understand, her tone gentle but firm, then left, closing the door behind her with a soft click. I stood in the center of that beautiful room and felt the weight of everything crash down on me. 3 days ago, I'd been in New York, planning this trip with the naive confidence of someone who'd never faced real danger. Now I was in a Turkish mobster's mansion, bought like merchandise, trapped in luxury while my best friend had been transformed into someone else entirely. The shower was pure torture in the best way. Hot water sluiced away warehouse grime and fierce sweat, and I stood under the spray until my skin turned pink and the water finally started to cool. The clothes in the closet fit perfectly. Soft cotton pants, and a simple cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Everything designer, everything expensive, everything chosen by someone who understood exactly how to make a cage comfortable. I was examining the door, looking for locks or cameras, when it opened without warning. Khan entered like he owned the space, which of course he did, carrying a tray with food that made my stomach growl traitorously. You need to eat. He set the tray on the small table near the window. Fatma prepared kofta and rice. Simple, but you need strength. I'm not hungry. A lie. I was starving. You're a terrible liar. He gestured to the chair. Sit, eat. We need to talk, and I prefer to have difficult conversations with people who aren't about to faint from hunger. Every instinct screamed not to accept anything from him, not to give him the satisfaction of obedience. But my body betrayed me, drawn to the smell of the food, and I found myself sitting before I'd consciously decided to move. Kaan took the chair across from me, his long legs stretched out with casual elegance. He watched as I took the first bite, and damn him, it was delicious. The kofta was perfectly spiced, the rice fluffy and fragrant with butter, and something that might have been saffron. "Tell me why you really came to Turkey," he said once I'd eaten enough to take the edge off my hunger. "The truth, not the story about looking for your friend." "That is the truth." Sarah stopped responding to messages 2 weeks ago. Before that, she'd been sending photos, telling me about this amazing city, about opportunities she'd found. Then nothing. Her parents contacted me when they couldn't reach her, and I had to find her. "So you came alone, without telling anyone, without any backup plan." His tone suggested this confirmed his suspicion that I was, in fact, stupid. "Did you think Turkey was like a movie? That you'd arrive, find your friend, and everything would be fine?" "I thought the police would help me. I went to the precinct, filled out a missing persons report, and Officer Demir said he'd personally make sure." I stopped, the full weight of my naivety hitting me. He knew, didn't he? He knew where Sarah was all along. Demir works for several different organizations, including mine. He identifies vulnerable targets: tourists, students, anyone who won't be immediately missed. Then he sells them to whoever's paying. You walked right into his trap by being exactly what he was looking for. And you bought me from him. I prevented you from being sold to someone far worse. Khan leaned forward slightly. "Do you understand what would have happened to you in those brothels? They would have drugged you, broken you, turned you into something that no longer resembled Brianna Matthews. Within a week, you would have forgotten your own name, and within a month, you wouldn't have cared." The clinical way he described it made my throat tight. "And what are you going to do with me instead? That depends entirely on you." His dark eyes held mine. "You came looking for Sarah Chen. I can arrange for you to see her, to confirm she's alive and well. After that, you have 2 choices. I can put you on a plane back to New York, with enough money to forget this ever happened, and a clear understanding that if you ever speak of what you've seen, the consequences will be severe. Or you stay. You work for me, like Sarah does. You use that international relations degree for something more interesting than sitting in classrooms. And you learn that the world is far more complicated than your American idealism allows for." I set down my fork, appetite gone. Why would I choose to stay with someone who keeps people prisoner? Because freedom is an illusion, Brianna. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the Bosphorus. "You think you were free in New York? Drowning in student debt? Working minimum wage jobs to afford your education? Trapped in a system designed to keep you struggling for decades? At least here, your chains come with compensation." That's a pretty speech, but it doesn't change what you are. He turned back to face me, and something in his expression had shifted, become harder. "What I am is the man who controls this city's shadows. What I am is someone who protects his people, provides for them, ensures they have power when the legitimate world would grind them down. My grandfather came to Istanbul with nothing, built an empire through sheer will and strategic violence. My father expanded it, and I've made it untouchable. Everything you see, everything I have, exists because I refuse to play by rules designed to keep people like me powerless. People like you? People who understand that morality is a luxury afforded only to those who've never had to fight for survival." The conviction in his voice was almost seductive, the way he framed his criminal empire as some kind of righteous resistance. But I'd studied enough history to know that every monster believed themselves justified. "I want to see Sarah," I said. "Before I make any decisions, I need to see her." Khan studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling feeling he could read every thought crossing my mind. "Tomorrow, I'll arrange it. For now, you need rest. Don't try to leave this room tonight. The hallways have motion sensors, and I'd rather not have to explain to my security team why they need to restrain you." He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. "One more thing, Brianna. Your room is comfortable, the door isn't locked, and you have access to most of the house during the day. But make no mistake, this is a prison, just a pleasant one. The sooner you accept that, the easier everything will be. After he left, I sat in that beautiful room and tried to process everything. The food sat heavy in my stomach, and exhaustion pulled at me like weights. But I couldn't sleep, not yet. I needed to understand the space I was in, the man who controlled it, the danger that surrounded me like silk threads slowly tightening into a noose. Through the window, Istanbul sparkled across the Bosphorus, a city of 15 million people living their normal lives, while I sat trapped in a mansion, bought for $20,000 by a man who spoke of freedom as though it were something he could grant or take away at whim. Sarah was out there somewhere, transformed into someone called Celine, apparently content in her new life. How long before I became someone else, too? Before Brianna Matthews disappeared and was replaced by whoever Khan Bayrak decided I should be. The thought terrified me more than anything else that had happened today. Not the kidnapping, not the warehouse, not even Khan himself with his cold eyes and colder authority. But the possibility that I might stop fighting, that I might accept this cage and forget what it felt like to choose my own path. I climbed into that enormous bed and stared at the ceiling, where shadows from the Bosphorus reflected in moving patterns. Tomorrow I'd see Sarah. Tomorrow I'd understand what had really happened to her. And then I'd figure out how to escape this golden prison before it became too comfortable to leave, because Khan Bayrak might believe he'd rescued me, might think offering luxury and compensation made him different from the monsters who'd kidnapped me. But a cage was still a cage, no matter how beautifully it was decorated. And I refused to be anyone's possession. Morning came with light streaming through windows I'd forgotten to cover. And for a disoriented moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then reality crashed back. Istanbul, Khan Bayrak, the warehouse, everything. I sat up too quickly, and my head spun with the sudden movement. A soft knock at the door made me freeze. "Evet?" I called, using one of the few Turkish words I knew. Yes. Fatma entered with another tray, this one laden with breakfast that smelled like heaven. Fresh bread, cheese, olives, tomatoes, honey, and tea in a delicate glass cup. She set it down with a gentle smile and said something in Turkish that I interpreted as encouragement to eat, then gestured toward the closet before leaving. I picked at the food, my appetite dulled by anxiety about seeing Sarah. What would she look like? Would she even recognize me? Had Kayan been telling the truth about her being content, or was that just another manipulation to make me compliant? The closet yielded dark jeans that fit perfectly, and a cream-colored silk blouse that whispered money with every movement. I braided my hair to keep it contained and examined myself in the floor-length mirror. I looked different than I had yesterday. Cleaner, more polished, less like a kidnapping victim, and more like someone who belonged in this world of luxury and danger. The thought unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Khan was waiting downstairs in what I was starting to think of as his office, though it looked more like a war room. Multiple monitors showed security feeds from around the property, and what I suspected were other locations throughout Istanbul. Maps covered one wall, marked with pins and notes in Turkish. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface clear except for a laptop and a single photograph in an ornate frame. I couldn't help my curiosity. The photo showed 3 boys, maybe ranging from 7 to 12 years old, standing in front of a modest house that looked nothing like this mansion. The youngest had Khan's eyes, that same intense darkness even in childhood. Next to him stood a boy who shared his features but with a softer expression, and the oldest looked protective, one hand on each younger brother's shoulder. "My brothers," Khan said from directly behind me, and I jumped. I hadn't heard him enter. "Kerem and Deniz?" That was taken 2 months before our father was killed. "I'm sorry." The words came automatically, and I meant them despite everything. "Don't be. He wasn't a good man." Khan moved around the desk, settling into his chair with the casual power of someone who owned not just the furniture, but the entire world it occupied. But he was smart enough to ensure we'd be protected after his death. Hence all this. He gestured vaguely at the opulent surroundings. Is that why you do this? To protect your brothers? Something flickered in those dark eyes. Among other reasons. Are you ready to see Sarah? My heart jumped. Now, where is she? She works at one of my legitimate businesses, an art gallery in Nishantasha. Very upscale, very respectable, catering to wealthy tourists and local collectors. She's quite good at it, actually. Has an eye for quality that I've found useful in other acquisitions. The way he said acquisitions made it clear he wasn't just talking about art. Will she be happy to see me? That depends entirely on what you say to her. Khan stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced efficiency. Today's was charcoal gray, paired with a black shirt that made him look like beautiful violence personified. Sarah Chen made a choice when she realized what she'd stumbled into. She could have fought, could have tried to run, could have made herself a problem that required solving. Instead, she adapted. She learned. She became valuable. I'm hoping you're similarly intelligent. You mean you're hoping I'll give up and accept being your prisoner? I mean, I'm hoping you'll recognize an opportunity when it's presented. He moved past me, his cologne, that same oud and leather from yesterday, wrapping around me like a warning. Come, the car's waiting. The drive to Nishantasha took us through neighborhoods that could have been transplanted from Paris or Milan. Designer boutiques, expensive cafes, women in clothing that cost more than I'd earned in a year. The art gallery was tucked on a quiet street, its facade all glass and minimalist elegance. Inside was even more impressive. High ceilings, carefully curated pieces ranging from traditional Ottoman miniatures to contemporary installations, and soft lighting that made everything glow with importance. And there, behind a sleek desk, talking to a customer in what sounded like fluent Turkish, was Sarah. Except it wasn't Sarah, not the Sarah I'd known. This woman wore her hair differently, styled in a sleek bob instead of the long waves I remembered. Her clothes were designer, her makeup perfectly applied, her entire demeanor polished to a shine that made her look 5 years older and infinitely more sophisticated. She glanced up as we entered, and I watched emotions cross her face in quick succession. Recognition, shock, fear, and then something that looked almost like resignation. She excused herself from the customer and approached us with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Khan Bey, she said in Turkish, inclining her head respectfully. I wasn't expecting you today. We had a situation that required my personal attention. Khan's hand settled on the small of my back, the touch possessive and unmistakable. I believe you know Brianna Matthews. Sarah's gaze finally met mine fully, and I saw the plea there, the desperation beneath the polished exterior. Brie, she said, my nickname sounding strange in her mouth after months of silence. What are you doing here? Looking for you. Your parents were worried. I was worried. You just stopped responding and I'm fine, as you can see. She cut me off, glancing nervously at Khan. I've been busy with my new job, my new life. I'm sorry I worried everyone, but I'm exactly where I want to be. The words sounded rehearsed, and I recognized the tone she'd used when we'd had to lie to her parents about why she'd failed a class, or where she'd really been on a Saturday night. Sarah was performing, and she was terrified. Can we talk? I asked, trying to catch her eye. Privately? That's not necessary, Khan said before Sarah could respond. Anything you need to say to Sarah can be said in front of me. After all, I'm responsible for her well-being now. Like you're responsible for mine. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Sarah's eyes widened, and she looked between us with growing alarm. Bree, what happened? Are you... She's under my protection, Khan interrupted smoothly. Similar to your own situation, though she's proving more resistant to accepting the benefits of such an arrangement. I watched Sarah's face carefully, looking for any sign that she wanted to be rescued, that she was waiting for someone to save her. Instead, I saw calculation, the same expression she'd worn when deciding whether to take a risk on a questionable decision. "Brianna," she said carefully, "this isn't what you think. Conbay has been nothing but generous. He gave me opportunities I never would have had back home. Introduced me to a world I didn't know existed. Yes, things started differently than I'd planned, but I've made the best of the situation. You've been here 6 months, Sarah. 6 months without contacting your parents, your friends, me. That's not making the best of anything. That's being held captive." "Lower your voice," Khan said quietly, but the command in it made me immediately comply. "You're attracting attention." I glanced around and realized other people in the gallery were starting to stare. The customer Sarah had been helping watched with undisguised curiosity, and I saw a man I suspected was security moving closer. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private," Khan suggested, gesturing toward the back of the gallery. "Sarah, the office." She nodded, leading us through a door marked Ozel into a small but elegantly appointed office. The moment the door closed behind us, the professional mask Sarah wore cracked slightly. "Bree, what the hell were you thinking coming here? Do you have any idea how dangerous?" "Dangerous? You disappeared without a word. Your parents filed a missing persons report, and I've been going out of my mind wondering if you were dead in a ditch somewhere. And now I find out you've just been, working retail for a Turkish crime lord?" "It's not that simple." "Then explain it to me." I sat on the edge of her desk, crossing my arms. "Make me understand how you went from aspiring model to whatever this is." Sarah glanced at Khan, seeking permission, and the fact that she needed his approval to speak freely told me everything I needed to know about how content she actually was. "Go ahead," Khan said, settling into a chair near the window. "Tell her your story. Perhaps it will help her make better choices than you initially did." The criticism made Sarah flinch, and fury burned through me. "Don't talk to her like that." "I'll talk to her however I please. She works for me, lives under my protection, and exists at my discretion." His eyes met mine, cold and unyielding. "As do you now. The sooner you both accept that reality, the better." Sarah took a deep breath, and I watched her compose herself with visible effort. I came to Istanbul for what I thought was a modeling opportunity. A scout had contacted me through Instagram, showed me a contract with a legitimate agency, even paid for my flight and accommodation. When I arrived, everything seemed fine at first. The agency was real, the people were professional, the photo shoots were exactly what I'd expected. So what changed? I noticed things. Girls who'd been there before me would suddenly disappear, replaced by new ones. Questions about our passports, our families, whether anyone knew exactly where we were. And then one night, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear, about how the agency was a front for something darker, about how the girls who didn't make the cut as models got sold into other industries. My stomach turned. Jesus, Sarah. I panicked. I tried to run, managed to get out of the building and into the street before they caught me. I thought I was dead, or worse. She looked at Khan with something that might have been gratitude. But instead, they brought me to him. "And he saved you?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "He bought me," Sarah corrected. "Just like he bought you. Paid the agency's owner directly, told them I was under his protection, and that was that. I've been working here ever since, learning the business, proving I could be useful." "You could have contacted your parents, told them you were safe." "And say what? That I'd gotten involved with the Turkish mafia? That I was essentially owned by Khan Bayrak? They'd have called the embassy, the police, started an international incident that would have gotten people killed. She shook her head. It was safer for everyone if Sarah Chen just disappeared and Seelan took her place. The resignation in her voice, the way she'd accepted this transformation as inevitable, terrified me more than anything else. This isn't you, Sarah. You're not the kind of person who just gives up. I didn't give up. I adapted. She straightened, and I saw a flash of the stubborn friend I'd known. And you need to do the same, Bree. Because if Khan says you're under his protection, that means you're involved now whether you like it or not. The only question is whether you're going to fight it and make everything harder, or whether you're going to be smart and use it to your advantage. Use being someone's property to my advantage? Use having the protection of the most powerful man in Istanbul to your advantage, she corrected. Do you know how many girls would kill for the position you're in? To have Khan Bayrak personally invest in keeping you safe? I looked at Khan, who'd been watching this entire exchange with that unsettling stillness. Is that what you tell all the women you buy? That they should be grateful? No. He stood, moving closer with that predatory grace. Most don't have the intelligence to recognize the opportunity I'm offering. You and Sarah are different. You're educated, capable, adaptable. You could be assets instead of liabilities. The question is whether you're brave enough to choose power over victimhood. That's not a choice. That's coercion dressed up in pretty words. Is it? He was close enough now that I could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Tell me, Brianna, what was your plan after university? Work some entry-level position in international relations, maybe at an NGO or think tank, earning barely enough to pay off your student loans while watching people with connections and money advance past you? Spend decades climbing a ladder designed to keep you in your place? At least I'd be free. You'd be trapped in a different cage, just one with less comfortable bars. His hand came up, fingers grazing my jawline with a gentleness that belied the steel in his voice. I'm offering you a real education in how power actually works, how the world actually functions beneath its polite surface. Stay, learn, become someone who matters instead of just another idealistic graduate drowning in debt and disappointment. The worst part was how tempting it sounded. How his words found the small, bitter part of me that resented every rich kid who'd sailed through university on their parents' money, every unpaid internship I couldn't afford to take, every door that had been closed because I didn't have the right connections. But I'd seen what accepting his offer had done to Sarah. Turned her into Seelan, someone who asked permission to speak freely, who'd abandoned her family and identity, to become useful to a man who viewed people as acquisitions. I need time, I said finally, to think about all this. Of course. Khan stepped back, and I could breathe again. Take all the time you need. You're not going anywhere regardless. The reminder that I was still a prisoner, however comfortable my cell, landed like a slap. Can I at least spend time with Sarah? Talk to her without you hovering? He glanced at Sarah, who nodded almost imperceptibly. 1 hour. Emre will wait outside. Don't try anything foolish. Both of you are under surveillance, and any attempt to contact authorities or leave the premises will have consequences. After he left, Sarah and I stared at each other across the small office. Finally, she spoke. He's not as bad as you think, Bree. He bought us, like merchandise. How is that not bad? He saved us from something worse. The agency I was with, the brothels you would have ended up in. Those places break you in ways you never recover from. Khan might control us, but he doesn't destroy us. There's a difference. That's a pretty low bar for morality. She smiled sadly. Welcome to the real world, where survival means accepting that the powerful will always take what they want, and the only choice we have is whether to fight pointlessly or adapt strategically. I looked at my best friend, this stranger wearing Sarah's face. and wondered if the same transformation awaited me. If 6 months from now, I'd be someone called by a different name, working in another of Khan's businesses, telling the next desperate girl that giving up was actually just being smart. The thought made me want to scream, but instead, I sat down beside Sarah and asked the question I dreaded most. "Are you happy?" She considered it for a long moment. "I'm alive. I'm safe. I have purpose and opportunities I never dreamed of. Is that happiness? I don't know anymore. But it's better than the alternatives. And in this world, better is sometimes the best you can hope for." It was the most honest thing she'd said since I'd arrived, and it terrified me more than all of Khan's threats combined. 3 weeks passed in Khan Bayrak's golden cage, and I learned that comfort could be its own form of torture. Every morning, Fatma brought breakfast tailored exactly to my preferences. Every afternoon, I had access to a library that would have made my university professors weep with envy. Every evening, Khan joined me for dinner, and we engaged in conversations that ranged from philosophy to politics to the structural weaknesses of the international system I'd spent years studying. He was brilliant, I discovered with reluctant admission. Frighteningly so. He could discuss Machiavelli and Ibn Khaldun with equal fluency, debate the merits of various economic theories, and dissect geopolitical situations with an analyst's precision. The criminal empire he'd built wasn't the product of brute force alone, but of a strategic mind that saw patterns and opportunities others missed. And that made him infinitely more dangerous than simple violence ever could. I saw Sarah twice more during those weeks, always under supervision, always with the unspoken understanding that we were performing for an audience. She seemed to have accepted her role completely now, even bringing me files about gallery acquisitions to review, teaching me how to authenticate pieces and assess their market value. "You're good at this," she said during our third meeting, genuine surprise in her voice as I correctly identified a forgery attempt. The attention to detail, the ability to see what's actually there versus what you're meant to see, those are valuable skills. I'm not staying, Sarah, no matter how many skills I develop. But even as I said it, I felt the lie, because each day made leaving feel slightly less urgent. Each conversation with Khan revealed more of the complex machinery that ran the city's shadows. Each luxury made my previous life seem smaller, more limited, more naive. I was adapting, just like Sarah had, and I hated myself for it. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. Khan had been gone all day on what he'd vaguely termed business, and I'd spent the time exploring the mansion more thoroughly. I discovered that while the main areas were opulent showpieces, the private quarters where Khan actually lived were surprisingly spare. Simple furniture, minimal decoration, and, I'd found in his bedroom when I'd worked up the courage to snoop, a photograph of those 3 boys again, this time joined by a woman who must have been their mother. "Finding anything interesting?" His voice from the doorway made me drop the frame, and it hit the floor with a crack that made me wince. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been—" I knelt to pick it up, and saw that the glass had shattered across the photograph, spiderwebbing across the woman's face. Khan crossed the room in 2 strides, taking the frame from my hands, with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the anger I'd expected. He examined the damage, his expression unreadable. "I'll replace it," I said quickly. "I'll find another frame, fix the glass, leave it." He set it on the nightstand, glass and all. "Maybe it's better this way. A reminder that everything breaks eventually." The bitterness in his voice caught me off guard. "Your mother, she died when I was 9. Car accident, though we never knew if it was actually an accident or a message from one of my father's enemies." He turned to face me, and something in his expression had shifted, become more raw. "You want to know why I do this? Why I built an empire on blood and fear? That's why. Because in this world, the only protection is power. The only safety is being too dangerous to challenge. I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate. Don't be sorry. Be smart enough to learn from it. He moved closer, and I realized I was backed against his nightstand with nowhere to retreat. You've been here 3 weeks, Brianna. 3 weeks of comfort and safety and opportunities to learn. And yet you still look at me like I'm the enemy instead of the man keeping you alive. You are keeping me prisoner. I'm keeping you protected. His hand came up, fingers tangling in my hair with a possessiveness that made my breath catch. There's a difference, even if you're too stubborn to see it. Then prove it. Let me leave. Let me go home. To what? Student loans and minimum wage jobs in a world that will grind you down until you're too tired to dream? He leaned closer, his breath warm against my skin. I can give you everything you've ever wanted, Brianna. Power, knowledge, purpose. All I ask in return is loyalty. And my freedom. Freedom is an illusion maintained by people who've never had real power. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I hated how my body responded to the touch, how heat pooled in my stomach despite every rational objection my mind screamed. Stay with me, work with me, become something extraordinary instead of just another girl who thought she could change the world. I should have pushed him away, should have demanded he respect my boundaries. But I'd been in this cage for 3 weeks, surrounded by luxury and intellect, and a man who saw me not as a victim, but as potential. A man who was dangerous and brilliant and absolutely certain that he could mold me into whatever he wanted. I can't, I whispered, even as I didn't move away. Can't or won't. His other hand settled on my waist, pulling me closer. There's a difference, Brianna. Just like there's a difference between captivity and protection, between submission and strategic alliance, between being owned and choosing to belong. Those are the same things dressed in prettier words. Are they? He tilted my face up, forcing me to meet his dark eyes. Or are you so committed to seeing yourself as a victim that you can't recognize an opportunity when it's offering itself? Before I could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgency that made him step back immediately. He checked it, and whatever he saw made his expression harden into something cold and lethal. We have a situation. He was already moving toward the door. Stay in your room. Emre will be posted outside. Don't leave for any reason until I return. What kind of situation? The kind that requires my personal attention. He paused at the threshold. And Brianna, if anyone tries to enter this room who isn't Fatma or Emre, scream loudly. Then he was gone, and I was left standing in his bedroom with my heart racing and my mind spinning. The shift from intense intimacy to cold efficiency had been so abrupt I felt whiplash, but the fear in his final warning had been genuine. Something was wrong. I returned to my own room as instructed, finding Emre already positioned outside my door. He gave me a curt nod but said nothing, his attention focused on the hallway. Through the window, I could see more security gathering on the grounds, and the tension in the air was palpable even from a distance. Hours passed. Fatma brought dinner I couldn't eat, her expression worried. Night fell, and still Khan didn't return. I tried to read, to distract myself, but every sound made me jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. It was past midnight when I finally heard footsteps in the hall. The door opened without a knock, and Khan entered looking like he'd walked through hell. His suit was rumpled, there was blood on his knuckles, and his usually controlled expression showed edges of fury barely contained. Are you hurt? I was on my feet before I'd consciously decided to move. Not my blood. He moved to the window, staring out at the dark Bosphorus. We had a traitor in the organization, someone feeding information to a rival family, compromising our operations. It's been dealt with. The casual way he said dealt with made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to approach him. Is it safe now? Safe is relative, but the immediate threat has been neutralized. He turned to face me, and I saw exhaustion beneath the fury. This is what my world looks like, Brianna. This is the reality behind the luxury and power. People betray, people die, and the only constant is that weakness gets exploited. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand. He crossed the space between us, his hands framing my face with a desperation I'd never seen in him before. I need you to understand that keeping you here isn't about control or possession or whatever romanticized notion you have of captivity. It's about keeping you alive, because the moment anyone in this world knows you matter to me, you become a target. The admission hung in the air between us. You matter to me. 4 words that changed everything and nothing. I don't want to matter to you, I whispered. Too late. His forehead rested against mine. You already do, and that makes you the most dangerous thing in my life right now. Then let me go. Send me home where I can't be used against you. I can't. The words sounded torn from somewhere deep. I've tried to convince myself I could, that the smart thing would be to put you on a plane and forget you existed. But I can't, Brianna. You've gotten under my skin, into my head, and I don't know how to extract you without tearing myself apart in the process. I looked up into those dark eyes and saw something I'd never expected to find there. Vulnerability. Raw, genuine vulnerability from a man who'd built his entire existence on being untouchable. This is insane, I said. Yes. He didn't disagree. You're a criminal, a killer, everything I should run from. Yes. And I'm your prisoner, whether you call it protection or not. Yes. His thumb traced my cheekbone. But you're also the first person in years who's looked at me and seen something beyond the power and the fear. You see the man I was before this world hardened me into what I needed to be. And I can't let that go, even if I should. The honesty was devastating and terrifying, because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, I'd stopped seeing him as just my captor and started seeing the complexity beneath, the brilliant mind, the fierce protection of his brothers, the weight of responsibility he carried for hundreds of people who depended on him. I'd started to understand him, and understanding was the first step toward something far more dangerous than hate. I don't know what you want from me, I admitted. I want you to choose to stay, not because you're forced to, but because you see the same potential I see in what we could build together. His voice dropped lower, intimate and intense. I want you to look at me and see not a monster but a man who would burn this entire city down before letting anyone hurt you. That's not love. That's possession. Isn't it both? He tilted my face up, his lips a breath away from mine. Isn't love just another form of beautiful possession? The choice to belong to someone completely, to let them see every flaw and weakness and still claim you as theirs. I should have pulled away. Should have reinforced the boundaries that had been eroding with every conversation, every shared meal, every moment of seeing the human beneath the monster. But I didn't. Instead, I closed the distance and kissed him, choosing in that moment to stop fighting the inevitable truth that had been building since the warehouse. That Khan Bayrak had claimed me, and somewhere along the way I'd started to let him. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined. Not forceful or demanding, but almost tentative, as though he was giving me room to change my mind. But I didn't want room. I wanted the certainty of his arms around me, the heat of his mouth on mine, the feeling that for just this moment, I wasn't alone in this strange, dangerous world. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his expression held something I'd never seen before. Hope mixed with fear, as though he couldn't quite believe I'd crossed this line willingly. This doesn't mean I'm staying, I said, needing to maintain some illusion of control. I know. He pulled me closer, my head against his chest where I could hear his heart racing as fast as mine. But it means you're considering it. and that's more than I had this morning. We stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other while the world continued its dangerous dance outside. And I realized with sinking certainty that Sarah had been right. Adaptation wasn't surrender. It was survival. But the question remained. Would I survive becoming what Khan Bayrak needed me to be? Or would I lose myself entirely in the process of becoming his? I didn't have an answer. But for tonight, in his arms, I was willing to postpone the question. The morning after kissing Khan Bayrak, I woke up in my own room alone, with sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close and the taste of regret sharp on my tongue. What had I been thinking? I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, given him ammunition that transformed me from reluctant captive into something far more complicated, a willing participant in my own captivity. Fatma brought breakfast with her usual efficiency, but this time she also brought a garment bag and a small velvet box. She set both on the bed with a gentle smile and said something in Turkish that I didn't understand, though her tone suggested approval of something. Inside the garment bag was a dress that made my breath catch. Deep emerald silk that would cling to every curve, with a neckline that suggested sophistication rather than desperation. The kind of dress that cost more than my monthly rent back in New York. The kind that announced the wearer belonged in rooms where power was traded like currency. The velvet box held a necklace of delicate gold, with a single emerald pendant that matched the dress exactly. No note, no explanation, just the clear message that Khan expected me to wear both. I should have refused, should have sent it all back and demanded my jeans and sweater. But curiosity won out over pride, and I found myself showering, doing my hair with more care than usual, and finally slipping into the dress that fit like it had been made for my exact measurements. Which it probably had been. Khan seemed to know everything about me, down to the size of my body and the shape of my fears. My reflection showed a stranger, polished, elegant, the kind of woman who could navigate Khan's world without flinching. The transformation from NYU student to this was so complete it frightened me. How easy it had been to shed my old skin and slip into this new one. Khan was waiting in his study when I descended the stairs, and the way his eyes tracked my movement made heat pool low in my stomach. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with that casual grace, and I noticed he wore a tie that matched my dress exactly. Coordinated, like we were a couple rather than captor and captive. "Beautiful," he said simply, "though you would be beautiful in anything." "What's this about?" I gestured to the dress. "Where are we going?" "To a dinner party. One of Istanbul's old families is celebrating their patriarch's birthday, and attendance is mandatory for anyone with influence in this city." He crossed to me, his fingers brushing the emerald at my throat. "You'll be introduced as my partner. Not just someone under my protection, but someone who stands beside me by choice. I haven't agreed to that." "Haven't you?" His hand settled at my waist. "You kissed me last night, Brianna. You chose to cross that line. Now we move forward from that choice. One kiss doesn't make me your partner. No, but it makes you something more than a prisoner. And in my world, perception is reality. If I introduce you as someone important to me, you become important, which means you become protected by every alliance I've built." His expression grew serious. "It also means you become a target for everyone who wants to hurt me. Are you ready for that?" I wasn't, but something in his tone suggested this wasn't really a question. "Do I have a choice?" "You always have choices, Brianna. You just might not like all the options." He stepped back, and I saw Emre waiting by the door with that same watchful expression. "The dinner starts in an hour. We'll discuss appropriate behavior on the way." The venue was a yala on the Bosphorus, one of those historic waterfront mansions that dripped with Ottoman grandeur. Boats lined the private dock, and security was everywhere. Men in dark suits with earpieces, discreetly checking guests as they arrived. The wealth on display was staggering, from the women's jewelry, to the cars being valet parked, to the casual way people discussed vacation homes in 3 different countries. Khan's hand never left the small of my back as we navigated the crowd, introducing me to men whose names I recognized from news reports about corruption scandals, to women whose faces I'd seen in society magazines, to people who smiled with practiced warmth, while their eyes calculated exactly what threat or opportunity I represented. Khan, a booming voice cut through the polite murmur, and I turned to see a man who could only be described as a Turkish Santa Claus. White beard, generous belly, and a smile that seemed genuinely warm. I heard rumors you'd finally found someone to tolerate your moods. Come, introduce me to this beauty who's accomplished the impossible. Hakan Bey, Khan said with more warmth than I'd heard in his voice before. May I present Brianna Matthews? Brianna, this is Hakan Demir, not related to the unfortunate officer you met, who taught me everything I know about navigating this city's power structures. Everything except how to relax, Hakan said, taking my hand and kissing it with old-world gallantry. Welcome to Istanbul, Brianna. I hope Khan is treating you well? The question held genuine concern, and I found myself liking this man despite myself. He's been accommodating. Hakan laughed, a sound like rolling thunder. Accommodating! That's the most diplomatic description of Khan I've ever heard. You're good for him, I can already tell. He needs someone who won't just agree with everything he says. I'm not sure I'm good for anyone right now, I admitted. Nonsense. You're exactly what he needs. Hakan's expression grew more serious as he looked at Khan. Though I should warn you both, there's been talk about an American girl under your protection, about your increased interest in keeping her safe. The Yilmaz family is asking questions. Khan's expression didn't change, but I felt tension coil through his body. Let them ask. I'll provide answers they won't enjoy. Be careful, my boy. Mehmet Yilmaz has been looking for an excuse to move against you since you took the dockyard contracts. A perceived weakness isn't a weakness at all if I'm willing to defend it with everything I have. Khan's arm slid around my waist, pulling me closer in a gesture of clear possession. Brianna is under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally. The declaration sent whispers rippling through nearby guests, and I realized with sinking certainty that I'd just been publicly claimed. Whatever privacy or anonymity I might have had was gone, replaced by the target that came with being important to Khan Bayrak. Well then, Hakan said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes anymore. I suppose that makes things clear. I'll put the word out that she's family. That should discourage most stupidity. After Hakan moved away, I turned to Khan. What just happened? I made it official. You're mine now, in every way that matters in this world. He guided me toward the terrace overlooking the Bosphorus. Which means you're safe from casual threats, but exposed to serious ones. The Yilmaz family won't dare touch you directly, but they'll look for ways to use you against me. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to be careful. No more exploring on your own. No more conversations without Emre or one of my men present. No more trust in anyone except me, and those I explicitly approve. His hand cupped my face with surprising gentleness. I know you hate the restrictions, but they're not about controlling you. They're about keeping you alive. Before I could respond, a woman's voice cut through the evening air. Khan Bayrak, I heard you'd finally found someone willing to put up with you. I turned to find a stunning woman in a blood-red dress approaching us, her dark hair swept up in an elaborate style, her smile sharp as a knife. She was maybe 30, with the kind of beauty that came from excellent genes and better surgeons, and the way she looked at Khan suggested history. Aylin, Khan said, his tone carefully neutral. I thought you were in Monaco. I came back for the party. Wouldn't miss seeing the legendary Khan Bayrak brought to heel by an American girl. Her eyes swept over me with undisguised assessment. Though I must say I expected someone more impressive. "Brianna, this is Aylin Yilmaz," Khan said, and I felt my stomach drop at the surname. "Mehmet Yilmaz's daughter, Aylin, Brianna Matthews." "A pleasure," Aylin purred, though her tone suggested it was anything but. "Tell me, Brianna, how does one catch the interest of a man like Khan? I've been trying for years with no success." "I didn't try," I said honestly. "He just decided I belonged to him, and apparently that was that." Aylin's laugh was musical and cruel. How delightfully honest. Most women would pretend this was some grand romance rather than admitting they're just the latest acquisition. She turned her attention back to Khan. "My father would like a word with you, privately, about the dockyard situation." "I'm sure he would. Tell Mehmet Bey that my schedule is quite full these days." Khan's arm tightened around my waist. "I have more important priorities than business discussions at social events." "Priorities," Aylin repeated, her gaze dropping to where Khan held me. "How quickly things change. 3 months ago you were perfectly willing to discuss business with my father. Now suddenly you're too busy playing house with your American pet." "Careful, Aylin." Khan's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet. "Brianna is under my protection. Insults to her are insults to me. Of course. How could I forget?" Aylin's smile never wavered, though I wonder how long this particular fascination will last. "You've never been known for your constancy, Khan. What happens to poor Brianna when you inevitably grow bored?" The question hit closer to my own fears than I wanted to admit. But before I could respond, Khan had moved, backing Aylin toward the terrace railing with barely contained fury. "Listen very carefully," he said, his voice pitched so only we could hear. "Whatever game you and your father are playing, leave Brianna out of it. She's not a pawn, not a weakness, and not someone you can use to get to me. Touch her, threaten her, or continue to insult her, and I'll show you exactly why people fear the Bayrak name." Aylin's composure finally cracked, fear flickering across her perfect features. "My father won't like this. Your father can go to hell, along with anyone else who thinks they can challenge me through the woman I've chosen to protect." He stepped back, his hand finding mine. "We're leaving. Give Mehmet my regards and tell him the dockyards are non-negotiable." The ride back to the mansion was tense and silent. Khan stared out the window, his jaw tight with barely controlled rage, while I tried to process what had just happened. He'd defended me publicly, made enemies for me, drawn a line that put me at the center of conflicts I didn't fully understand. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "For what?" He didn't look at me. "For causing problems with the Yilmaz family. If I wasn't here, if you weren't here, Mehmet would have found another excuse to move against me. This isn't about you, Brianna. It's about power and territory and old grudges that have nothing to do with the woman I've chosen to keep close." He finally turned to face me. "But now that they know you matter to me, they'll use you, try to take you, hurt you, leverage you for concessions, which is why the security around you is about to become significantly tighter." "How much tighter can it get? I'm already barely allowed to breathe without supervision." "You'll be assigned personal guards. Emre plus 2 others, rotating shifts. No more visits to Sarah's gallery without a full security detail. No more time alone anywhere outside the mansion." His expression softened slightly. "I know you hate it, but I can't protect you if you're exposed. Maybe I don't want your protection anymore." The words came out sharper than intended. "Maybe I want to go home, back to my ordinary life where I wasn't a target or a possession or whatever I am to you. You're mine." The simple statement held absolute conviction. "And I don't let go of what's mine, Brianna. Not for your safety, not for your comfort, and certainly not because you're scared of what being with me means. Being with you? We kissed once, Khan. That doesn't make me yours. He moved with that predatory speed, pinning me against the car door with his body, one hand braced beside my head. You think one kiss is all it takes? I've known you were mine since I saw you in that warehouse, terrified and brave, and looking at me like I was salvation instead of damnation. The kiss was just you, finally admitting what I already knew. That's not how this works. You don't get to just decide someone belongs to you. I didn't decide. I recognized. His forehead rested against mine. You can fight it all you want. Be angry and scared and resentful. But it won't change the truth. You're mine, Brianna Matthews. In every way that matters. And I'll kill anyone who tries to take you from me. The conviction in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it lit something fierce and dangerous in my chest. A response to his possessiveness that I didn't want to examine too closely. This is insane, I whispered. Yes. He didn't disagree. But it's our insanity now, and I suggest you accept it, because the alternative is watching me burn down half of Istanbul to keep you safe. Looking into those dark eyes, I realized he meant every word. Khan Bayrak would start a war for me, would sacrifice his carefully built empire, would destroy everything he'd worked for, rather than let me go. And God help me, some twisted part of me wanted him to. The attack came 3 days later, swift and brutal, and perfectly calculated to exploit the one moment of weakness in Khan's security. I'd been visiting Sarah at the gallery, surrounded by Emre and 2 other guards as promised. We'd been discussing a new acquisition, a series of Ottoman miniatures that needed authentication, when Sarah's phone had rung. A brief conversation in Turkish, her face paling, and then she'd turned to me with barely controlled panic. Bree, you need to leave. Now. What's wrong? Just go, please. She glanced at Emre. Get her out of here. Something's happening. Something bad. And they're coming. The gallery's front window exploded inward in a shower of glass. I screamed, stumbling backward as armed men poured through the opening. Emre moved instantly, his gun drawn, positioning himself between me and the threat. But there were too many of them, and they moved with military precision. Brianna Matthews, one of them said in accented English, you're coming with us. Khan Bayrak sends his regards. It was a trap, a perfectly executed trap, using my own desperation to see Sarah against me. Emre fired, dropping one attacker, but another came from behind, catching him with a blow to the head that sent him crumpling. The other guards fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Within seconds, rough hands grabbed me, zip-tying my wrists just like that first night in the warehouse. Don't hurt her, Sarah said, and I saw tears streaming down her face. Please, you promised you wouldn't hurt her if I... The betrayal hit harder than any physical blow. Sarah, you did this? I'm sorry, Bree. I'm so sorry. She was sobbing now, backing away from me like I was the threat. They have my parents, the Yilmaz family. They've had them this whole time, using them to control me. They said if I helped them take you, they'd let my family go. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. The words came out cold, hard, nothing like my usual voice. You just chose to save yourself and damn me instead. That's enough, the man who'd spoken before said, pulling a hood over my head and plunging me into darkness. Khan Bayrak will come for her, and when he does, we'll be ready. They dragged me to a vehicle, a van, judging by the sound and the way I was thrown onto a metal floor. The zip ties cut into my wrists, and the hood made breathing difficult. But I forced myself to stay calm, to think, to plan. Kaan would come. I knew that with bone-deep certainty. He'd said he'd burn down Istanbul for me, and I believed him. The only question was whether he'd reach me before whatever the Yilmaz family had planned came to fruition. The drive seemed endless. When the van finally stopped and I was hauled out, I tried to memorize every sound, every smell, any detail that might help. Water nearby. I could hear it lapping against stone. The smell of fish and diesel. A marina, probably one of the private ones on the Bosphorus. They pushed me into a building, downstairs that echoed with my footsteps, and finally into a room where I was shoved into a chair. The hood came off, and I blinked in harsh fluorescent light. I was in some kind of basement, all concrete and shadows, with a single door and no windows. Mehmet Yilmaz sat across from me, flanked by 2 guards, his expression almost apologetic. "Miss Matthews," he said in perfect English. "I apologize for the rough treatment. This is business, nothing personal. Kidnapping is pretty personal from where I'm sitting." He smiled slightly. "You have spirit. I can see why Khan is so taken with you. Though I wonder if you understand what you've gotten yourself into, accepting the protection of a man like him." "I didn't accept anything. He decided I was his to protect, and apparently that was enough. And yet you stayed. You could have demanded to go home, could have refused his gifts, could have made yourself so troublesome that even Khan Bayrak's patience would have run out." Mehmet leaned forward. "But you didn't. You adapted. You learned. You became important to him, which makes you valuable to me. As leverage. As motivation. Khan has something I want, control of the dockyard operations. He's refused every reasonable offer, every threat, every attempt at negotiation. But now he has something he wants more than those dockyards. You." Mehmet gestured to one of his men, who produced a phone. "We're going to call him. You're going to tell him you're safe, that you'll be released unharmed as soon as he signs over the dockyard contracts. Simple. Clean. No one needs to get hurt. And if I refuse? Then we start removing pieces of you until he agrees anyway. Starting with fingers, moving to more essential parts. I'm told you're quite beautiful. It would be a shame to mar that beauty permanently." The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. "But I don't think it will come to that. Khan may be ruthless, but he's not stupid. He'll choose you over business. He has to." The phone rang once before Khan answered. "Mehmet." His voice was deadly calm, which somehow frightened me more than if he'd been raging. "I assume you have something of mine." "I have Miss Matthews, yes. She's unharmed for now, and she'll stay that way as long as you're reasonable about my terms." "Put her on." "Not a request." Mehmet held the phone to my ear. "Brianna, are you hurt?" "I'm okay." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Khan, don't do whatever he's asking. Don't give up." The phone was jerked away. "As you heard, she's alive. Now let's discuss terms. The dockyard contracts in exchange for the girl. You have 2 hours to deliver signed documents, or we start the negotiation with her screaming in the background." "You've made a fatal mistake, Mehmet." Khan's voice carried absolute certainty. "You assumed I'd negotiate. I don't negotiate for what's mine. I take it back, and anyone who stands in my way dies. You have 1 hour to release Brianna unharmed and turn yourself in to me for judgment. After that, I start killing everyone you've ever cared about, starting with Aylin." "You wouldn't dare." "I would dare everything for her. 1 hour, Mehmet. Tick-tock." The line went dead. Mehmet stared at the phone with something like fear, finally breaking through his confident facade. "He's bluffing. He has to be." But I knew better. Khan Bayrak didn't bluff. He'd meant every word, and Mehmet Yilmaz had just signed his own death warrant. What followed was the longest hour of my life. Mehmet paced, made frantic phone calls in Turkish, and sent his men to reinforce the building's defenses. I sat in that chair, my wrists still bound, and waited for the inevitable storm. It came with 43 minutes left on Khan's deadline. The lights cut out first, plunging the basement into darkness. Then came gunfire from above, rapid and precise. Mehmet's men scrambled, some running toward the stairs, others positioning themselves around me. I heard Mehmet shouting orders, heard the panic in his voice as he realized Khan had brought an army. The battle was short and brutal. Within minutes, the gunfire stopped, replaced by footsteps descending the stairs. The door to the basement exploded inward, and Khan Bayrak stood there backlit by emergency lighting, a gun in each hand and death in his eyes. He'd come for me, just like he'd promised. Mehmet's remaining guards raised their weapons, but Khan was faster. 2 shots, both perfectly placed, and they dropped. Mehmet himself had produced a gun and was holding it to my head, his hand shaking. "Stay back or I'll kill her," he threatened. Khan's expression didn't change. "No, you won't. Because you know that the second you pull that trigger, you're dead. And so is everyone you've ever loved. Your daughter, your brothers, your mother living in that villa in Bodrum. All dead within the hour. So lower the weapon, step away from her, and accept that you've lost. The dockyards are mine. Were always mine. Will always be mine." Khan took a step forward. "Just like she's mine. And you made the mistake of thinking you could take what belongs to me without consequences." I felt the gun barrel press harder against my temple, felt Mehmet's desperation in the trembling of his hand. And I made a choice. I threw my weight backward, slamming my head into Mehmet's face. The gun discharged, the bullet missing me by inches, and then Khan was moving. 1 shot, precise and final, and Mehmet Yilmaz collapsed. The sudden silence was deafening. Khan crossed to me in 2 strides, holstering his weapons and pulling a knife to cut my bindings. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you? If they touched you, I'm fine." I threw my arms around his neck, suddenly needing his strength, his certainty, his fierce protection. "I'm fine. You came. Did you think I wouldn't?" His arms crushed me against him. "I told you, Brianna. You're mine. I protect what's mine with everything I have, everything I am. The dockyards mean nothing compared to you." He pulled back enough to cup my face, his thumbs wiping away tears I didn't realize I'd shed. "Nothing in this world matters more than you. Not business, not power, not my entire empire. I would have given it all up to get you back safely. That's insane. Yes." He kissed me then, fierce and desperate and absolutely claiming, "But you make me insane, Brianna Matthews. You've destroyed my control, my focus, my carefully constructed walls, and I don't want them back if it means losing you." Behind him, I could see his men securing the building, could hear sirens in the distance that would be ignored, because the police in this city answered to Khan first. The Yilmaz Empire was being systematically dismantled, and I'd been the catalyst for a gang war that would reshape Istanbul's underworld. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we go home. We clean up this mess. We ensure that everyone understands what happens when they threaten what's mine." His expression softened slightly. "And then we figure out what we're building together, you and I. Because you're not leaving, Brianna. Not anymore. Not after I've shown you how far I'll go to keep you. I'm not your prisoner. No." He kissed me again, gentler this time. "You're my partner, my equal. The one person in this world I trust with everything I am. If you want to go home, I'll arrange it. I'll make sure you're protected even from a distance. Make sure your life continues safely. But I'm asking, begging if I have to, for you to choose to stay. Choose me. Choose us." I looked into those dark eyes and saw my future written there. Not the future I'd planned, not the safe, predictable path I'd imagined for myself, but something more, dangerous and thrilling and absolutely genuine. A partnership built on honesty, protection, and a love so fierce it terrified me. Sarah helped them, I said, needing him to know. She betrayed me to save her parents. I know. We found out after you were taken. His jaw tightened. Her parents are safe now, freed from the Yilmaz compound, and Sarah will face consequences for her choice. But that's not your burden to carry. What kind of consequences? That depends on you. He studied my expression. She's your friend, despite the betrayal. I can make her disappear. Not killed, but sent somewhere she can never threaten you again. Or I can give her a chance to earn back trust, though it will take years and constant surveillance. Your choice. The power he was giving me, the trust inherent in letting me decide someone's fate, stole my breath. I need time. To think. To process all of this. Take all the time you need. He helped me to my feet, keeping one arm around my waist as though afraid I'd disappear if he let go. But think about it in our home, surrounded by everything I can give you. Let me prove that choosing me isn't surrender. It's claiming power you never knew you could have. As we walked out of that basement into the Istanbul night, I realized the truth. I'd come to this city looking for Sarah, for answers, for adventure. What I'd found instead was a man who'd claimed me completely, who'd shown me a world I'd only studied in textbooks, who'd proven that sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the rightest one. I'd been delivered to Khan Bayrak as merchandise, but I was leaving as something far more valuable, his partner, his equal, his obsession. And God help me, I was choosing to stay. 3 months later, I stood in the same art gallery where Sarah had betrayed me, now fully renovated and under new management. Mine. Khan had given it to me as what he called a partnership gift, though I suspected it was more about proving I had real power in his world. Sarah worked there still, under strict supervision and probation. She'd apologized 1,000 times, and I'd accepted exactly once. Trust would take longer to rebuild, if it ever could be. But I'd chosen forgiveness over vengeance, which Khan said proved I was stronger than he'd ever be. He entered through the back, as he always did, avoiding the public entrance. His arms came around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder as we looked at the new exhibition I'd curated, a blend of traditional and contemporary Turkish art that had critics praising my eye for emerging talent. "How does it feel?" he murmured. "Being legitimate? Strange." I leaned back against his solid warmth. "But good. This is mine. Really mine. Not because you gave it to me, but because I've made it something valuable. Everything you touch becomes valuable, Brianna." His lips brushed my temple. "You've made me valuable, given me something worth protecting beyond power and territory. You've made me human again." I turned in his arms, looking up into those dark eyes that had once terrified me and now felt like home. "I love you." I know that's insane and probably some kind of Stockholm syndrome and definitely not what I planned when I came to Istanbul. But I do. I love you, Khan Bayrak. Monster and man. Criminal and protector. Every dangerous, beautiful, complicated part of you. His smile was genuine, transforming his face into something almost soft. And I love you, Brianna Matthews. My partner, my equal. The woman who conquered my frozen heart without even trying. He kissed me there in my gallery, surrounded by art and possibility and a future we were building together. Not the future either of us had planned, but something better, honest and fierce, and absolutely ours. I'd been delivered to him as merchandise, but I'd become something he'd never expected to find, his choice, his love, his home. And in the end, that transformation wasn't surrender at all. It was victory.